Our underdeveloped theology of what worship is, it gives way to personality-driven, preference-driven, ego-driven, tradition-driven understandings, and they are blinding us as the church to what it truly means to worship God with our lives. I began to kind of do some research and, not only from my own experience, but maybe just from some things that, some resources even online, and I found that to be interesting when you really think about the comments that people make in Christian gatherings. For instance, comments about music or style. And I know I'm probably going to step on some toes today, but hear me out, okay? Hear me all the way through the message today before you judge me, all right? Think about comments around music like, it's too loud. I can't hear myself think. I don't know any of these songs. Why don't we sing more of the old hymns? Or, why are there so many old songs? When is my church going to catch up and walk into the 21st century? This doesn't feel like worship. This band feels like a rock show. These comments, and maybe you've expressed these opinions yourselves, or maybe you've heard others do it, but these comments are common. But what's the underlying principle or belief about worship in these comments? It is that worship equals the music or the experience or the expression that I connect with best. So people often connect worship to their comfort, their personal music preference or nostalgia or familiarity. Some other people comment about the length and structure of our worship environments, like worship was just too long today. We really didn't get enough time today to worship. Why do we always do everything in the same order? Or maybe the counter. Why is there no liturgy in our worship services? These are common expressions, but what's the underlying belief in these comments? Well, the underlying belief is that worship equals something that starts and ends. It's a segment of time, a portion of a service or the service in its entirety. Others talk about the atmosphere. Well, it's too dang dark in there. I feel like the lights are a concert or a show. I miss it when it was simple. It's too flashy. Well, these are common comments, but what's the underlying belief in these comments about what worship is? Well, the underlying belief here is that worship is the aesthetic environment that makes me feel inspired or more reverent. And there's so many others. I could take the entirety of my time today and just walk through the complaints, right? The worship leader is too chatty. Why do they sing the same line over and over again? People aren't engaging here the way that I wish they would. Why doesn't anyone raise their hands and participate? Why does everyone in here have to raise their hands all the time? I didn't get anything out of today. It just didn't move me. These lyrics don't have enough theology to them. There's too much emotion and there's not enough truth in these songs. Do you hear how many of these statements you've heard over your lifetime as it pertains to worship in the church? Here's what I want us to understand today. Our underdeveloped theology of what worship is, it gives way to personality-driven, preference-driven, ego-driven, tradition-driven understandings, and they are blinding us as the church to what it truly means to worship God with our lives. Simply put, you and I need a new theology of worship. What does Scripture tell us? How does God define it? Not how did I grow up doing it? Not what does my tradition tell me? Not what does contemporary culture do? And I need to match the industry. What does Scripture tell us? And just one last thing before I dive into it. If you're holding in and on to something tightly that you personally define as a part of worship, but it doesn't align with the truths of Scripture, do yourself and me a favor today. Drop it and walk away from it, because if you don't, it will be a garden for idols to grow in your heart. Drop it. What does the Bible actually say anyway? Well, Exodus 20 says, "You shall have no other God before me." Joshua 24 says, "You should choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods that your fathers served," here's a tradition, "that were on the other side of the flood, or the God of the Amorites in whose land that you're dwelling." But then he says, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." 1 Samuel 7, verse 3, "Turn your hearts to the Lord and serve Him and Him only." Isaiah 42:8, "I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other, nor my praise to carved idols." And in Romans 1, he speaks of the exchange that so many people make, exchanging the truth for a lie, and worship and serve the creature rather than the Creator, Romans 1 says, who is blessed forever. What do these verses point us to about worship? This: worship can have only one object, and that is not you, not me, not your preference, not my preference, not your tradition, not my tradition. Worship's object is reserved, according to Scripture, for God and God alone. He is the only one who sits in the seat, who is worthy to be worshiped and adored and praised with our lives and our words.